Welcome to Lickin' on Lending, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of the mortgage industry. Your host, David Lickin, bringing you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. Whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, this show is your go-to source for all things mortgage. Let's get started. This is Lickin' on Lending. Now your host, David Lickin.
Listeners, we're in for a treat. I've got some of my favorite clients on the call. Okay, they're my favorite clients, but we put that out there. It's because these guys have built a really unique and powerful company, and I want the story to be told. We've had them on before, but we're basing today's interview off of a great book, one of my favorite books, if not my favorite. It's called Built to Last by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras. It's the successful habits of visionary companies. And it highlights enduring great companies that thrive by balance. I want to stress the word balance, and a fixed core ideology, values, and purpose with stimulated progress. And we're going to hear from conversation today. This gets stimulating at times. I'm really excited to have joining me Bobby Nicely, Rob Lindstrom, and Billy Seipel, also affectionately known as AM, for the three owners of Alcova Mortgage. Gentlemen, so good to have you back on the podcast.
Great to be here.
Well, I enjoy our conversations, and I'm really excited that you agreed to go on. By the way, listeners, getting these three to come on camera is a challenge because one of the secrets to their success is they are low-key, and they try to stay below the radar. But it's important when you get to a certain level of success, and they're at that level, they've got to come up and tell their story, and that's what we're wanting to accomplish here. But it's being best told in the book, Built to Last. Bobby, let's start with you. You love that book. We talk about that book regularly. What are some of the endearing facts about your company that you bring around? And we'll come around to Rob and Billy.
Sure. I think a couple things come to mind. I think first and foremost is, a purpose greater than ourselves. It didn't start out thinking that way necessarily. I mean, we had a purpose, but I think over the years, we've recognized that the exciting thing about what we have going on here, we call it creating a better way, better for our customers, better for our team members and our communities. And it's just exciting to build something that is bigger than yourself. So I think that's first and foremost. And then I think try to be a good steward of resources. Sometimes it's a little unnerving when you think about you have over 500 families that are responsible for your actions. So it's motivating, though, at the same time to do the right thing and do right by those folks.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. Bill, I mean, by the way, listeners, you'll hear me slip up. We call them Billy sometimes, it's Billy, Bobby, and Robbie, but that's how they started when they were young, because these are three guys that came together when you were basically kids playing together, and you then formed a great friendship. And so we slip back into the whys. Bobby's still the only one that's holding on to the Bobby. Bill is Bill now, and Rob is Robin. But I love some of that story. That's kind of the part that brings you guys together. We told that before when you were on before, but briefly, how is it that this started? Was it you, Bobby, that got into the business first and then talked these two into joining you?
Yeah, we've been friends for a long, long time. Billy and I met on a football field at 8 years old. Our dads were coaching us, and they were pretty serious about football. So we didn't just practice. We practiced, and then they schemed after practice. So while they were scheming after the practice, Billy and I got to know each other better, throwing the football around, a little bit more because there was nothing else to do, right? So we did the football around and got to know each other. And then we met Rob in high school. I did get in the business first, mortgage business for a few years. And the three of us had wanted to start a business. So we created our own mortgage company in late 2003.
How did you come up with the name Alcova? Bill, I believe it was you that came up with the name or suggested that.
I remember we rented a hotel room before we started the company.
Is there a story with that hotel room?
No, we rented a hotel room. We locked ourselves in, and we were going to make our business plan and put the plans all together. And we were trying to come up with a name. And as you've seen how we go back and forth and pretty much don't agree on anything, but, there was probably several hours just back and forth coming up with different names. And I just remember my parents' yearbook in high school was called the Alcova, and it stands for Alcova County, Virginia, where we're from. I thought it had a kind of like a ring to it, and I just kind of threw that out there. And that was, I don't necessarily say it was like the best name. It was the only name that nobody disagreed with. So that's kind of where we started with, and went from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Rob, what's your recollection of the naming of the company?
Oh, no. Once Billy tossed it out there, we moved on to the next topic. So we essentially
moved on to the next topic. Yeah.
He made us painfully go back and forth.
Yeah, Rob, one of the things that Bill said in his comments is it's one of the few things we agreed on because you guys disagree a lot. And I think that's one of the things that makes this company so unique and actually so strong is because you do have healthy debate over the various initiatives you're going after, strategies you're going after. Rob, let's get you started commenting about the differences and how that actually makes you stronger.
Yeah, I think naturally all three of us somewhat are very aligned on what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. I think it's important to become whoever's got a good idea or a bad idea. All with the other two always just going to challenge it some way or the other, even if we really don't think it, just to make sure we cover all the bases of what we want to accomplish and where this might go.
Yeah. Bill?
Yeah, no, he hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's, we've always, since we've been so comfortable around each other as friends, it's never been one of those things where we've been worried about, offending each other or, anything like that. I mean, especially Bobby and I, we've got to do some pretty rough disagreements as far as philosophical, you should say, disagreements, throughout our life. And, we'll go back at it. And, when you go through that stuff, it's really, it's not that big of a deal. And, I think, from a built to last standpoint, like you were talking about earlier, it's everything is kind of forged through fire. We're interested in getting the best possible answer, no egos involved. And I'll say it's definitely something that at least I don't know about these guys, but I've had to watch in my personal life, whether it be my marriage or friends or whatever. It's just my natural inclination is to be, dissenting to what anybody else said, just to try to, hey, let's stir up.
Generate the conversation. Yeah.
Let's just stir something up to try to, figure out what would be the best thing. And I have to watch myself sometimes because it just comes, been with these guys for so long, during 8 hours, 10 hours a day for, forever. Just the natural state is to challenge.
Well, one of the things that they talk about in the book, Built to Last, they talk about the balance. And what you're really talking about there is bringing a sense of balance. If they go left on a topic, you go right. It's just the natural thing. And it's really fun because I've been coaching you guys now for a better part of 4 years or longer, whatever long it has been. But it really gets to the point of you find a way to find a balance and thoroughly just have a good dialogue on everything. Bobby, you love NASCAR. We talk about that. And there's an old saying, Jack Nunnery brought that to my attention years ago, at Texas Capitol. If we ain't rubbing, we ain't racing. And there's certainly a fair amount of rubbing that goes on about it. You have any great stories about that? I love those rubbing and racing stories that you guys do so well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of a built-in checks and balances system between the three of us. As far as exact stories, the three of us, the good news is most of the time, like Rob said, we're aligned on purpose. So
it's so important.
So that part is comforting. We don't have to question whether or not we're aligned on the purpose, but the tactics to get there, sometimes we'll, exhaust ourselves. Probably the most famous one ever doesn't involve Alcova. It was Billy and I in college when we debated a Rambo movie deep into the night. But, when it comes to Alcova, a lot of the questions have been tactical, gone back and forth. And there's a phrase, I think Jeff Bezos coined it, but disagree and commit. So at the end of the day, we go pretty hard at each other for a few hours sometimes and try to wear each other down. But at the end of the day, we know that even if we're going forward, if 2 out of 3 say, hey, we need to do this, and the third one may disagree, but it'll commit to it. And so there's always that sense of appreciation that we're going to get the best from each other. So that allows us to go pretty hard at each other.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the lessons and takeaways from this part of the interview, folks, that I want you to get from this is, who do you have in your life challenging what you're wanting to do? I think that's such an important value. That's one of the things that's in the book, Built to Last. It talks about stimulated progress. We're in constant change of improvement, needing to do that. And if you're not challenging yourself, so single owners have a tendency to try to be the end all be all. They try to have this discussion internally in themselves. I want you to hear about what they just talked about, because one of the takeaways that makes this company so great, and it's built to last because of this, is the healthy discussion they have, debate with internally. And it gets really spirited, like 2-3 guys from high school can only do. And I think I want to applaud that. I want to talk about some of the things that you guys are doing, some of the initiatives that you're looking forward in the new year. We're talking about a changing landscape. AI is coming in stronger. You certainly tried to convince Rob that Angel AI was the end all be all solution. And I love, Rob, how your skepticism showed up in that. And you were looking at and challenging this. But you look at, explore things. Talk about this process. So when you're looking at that, I wouldn't consider you laggards in the sense that you're behind the eight ball and making decisions, but you're certainly not the first at going after something. There's a lot of initiatives going around, bright, shiny objects. You guys have been able to avoid that. Rob, let's talk about that. How have you been able to do that in your opinion?
So we avoid it. We're definitely looking at them. I think the big
That's a good way to put it. That's a good characterization. Yeah, you don't avoid it. You look at them, but
yeah, and the home runs of the AI coming to the mortgage industry, in my mind, is just not there yet. We got a ways to go. The accuracy being the number one key factor on a global scale. We know our audience. I think from the sales audience to the corporate audience to the entire company audience, and we know what they're going to absorb, what they need, and we also know what they need to be pushed on, and where the big wins are. So I think we balance that act of trying to figure out the wins of what technology can bring, and when to push and when to sort of hold back a little bit.
yeah. Bill, your 2 cents on that?
I think this gets back to what, Bobby is talking about, the way we interact, with each other, whether it's, finding a better way there. It's, in principle, we agree. It's here to stay, and it's gonna make a big impact. It's just, we don't know necessarily tactically how that's going to be over the next, 6 months, year, and it could change so fast. I mean, these types of situations, we just try to, always say, like, try to stay in the middle of the room. Don't put yourself in a corner somewhere where you can't really, adjust and have that agility to change directions, regardless of how great it is. We're in an industry where, it doesn't matter how good something is, we still have to get our sales staff and everyone else to use it. And we can say, oh, this is amazing. It still has to fit the bill, so to speak there. And, we've got to, don't get me wrong, we spend hours a week, looking at everything new coming out and just trying to see how it'll apply to us and how it's going to, apply to our sales staff and our ops staff and the customer as well. So, we're keeping our eye out there and we're trying as many things as possible. We're just not necessarily putting all the chips in there just yet.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, Bobby, Bill just hit on one of the core values, and it's agility. I mean, your ability to be out. Let's talk about the 4 defining values that are at the core of what you do. It's your core ideology, core values, purpose. Talk about those, please.
Sure. We refer to as CAST: courage, agility, sincerity, and tenacity. And they kind of shape who we are. We built those around the purpose statement being create a better way. And we believe, and kind of following up from our last point, when information is abundant like it is now for consumers, the trusted advice is even more important. So we're really trying to automate the transactional parts of our business so we can really elevate the relational parts.
Yeah. So CAST, C-A-S-T, they stand for, again?
Courage, agility, sincerity, and tenacity.
Yeah. And you guys are some of the most tenacious guys I've ever seen when it comes to believing in something. There's been initiatives that you've debated thoroughly, and then you go into it, and it's taken some tenacity to get into that. One of the things that you're most known for, especially amongst your competitors, is you can't steal Alcova employees away from branch managers, producers. They just don't leave you guys. You've created a culture. And then also when you're out recruiting, I got several of my clients where you guys have been going head to head. You know who I'm talking about, head to head with you guys, and you seem to be winning. What is it that you think is the formula that brings that up?
Oh, we're constantly trying to get better. So I think part of it is admitting and being transparent that we don't have it all figured out. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in our industry. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of people that have done others wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great people too in the industry, but there's a lot of stories of people that have been let down from their leadership, and folks have wound companies down or merged companies and not really done it in what we would, term the right way. So for us, it's trying to be transparent in who we are, and we show up as who we are. We're just 3 regular guys. We're not better than anybody else. We're certainly not smarter than anybody else. We built a great team, very, very fortunate. So they make us look good, and we work very hard to serve them. But I think it's the transparency, and it's some of the honesty, and that stands out. a little bit in the industry today where there's not a lot of that goes around.
Yeah. You in the book, Built to Last, they talk about a cult-like culture. Now, cult's got a real ugly name these days, but it's really a culture that is really strong and comes in so powerfully to be able to hold people together. So why is it that people stay there and you're so successful in recruiting and retention?
I'll talk more to the retention. I do think it has, for us, if you're a salesperson in this industry, you can, it is, for the most part, it is commodity. You can go anywhere and you're selling the same products, the same people, and everybody's selling the same thing. So really, from what I see, it comes down to, there's going to be, in any given week in, week out, everything's going to be, but everything's going to be kind of normal. And then something's going to happen. You're going to be in a position where you either screwed up, or, something inevitably happens, and it's how the company handles some of those situations. And, for at least from my perspective, what I've seen. And, I think because there's three of us, and because at any given moment, depending on the situation, something may happen, and I might be in you might have just caught me at the wrong day. And I might say, man, forget this. We're not doing this, And if I didn't have anybody to say, hey man, cool off, this, what are you talking about here? Or vice versa.
If you own the company by yourself, yeah, there's opportunities you would have missed.
Possibly, yeah. Quite possibly in any given situation, we would have done things to, in certain situations that would cause somebody to be like, you know what, I'm going to start looking elsewhere. But I do think there's always at least one of us, or most of the time two of us, that are kind of cooler heads, that when something happens and we're like, wait a minute, like, there's always somebody that's pragmatic to be like, hold on, man, what do we really, talk? Let's do the right thing here. Like, I know, we technically, didn't do anything wrong or whatever, but realistically, what's this, and we usually, I think, make the, we make the proper call for our employees and our sales staff, to build that trust with them, to know we got their back. It doesn't matter if you're not, the rub and reason, thing is, if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing much. And, I think if anything, I think most of our staff will say, look, they got our backs, right or wrong.
Yeah. And it's really fun to see the culture. And I'm going to bring up one guy that I really like in your production group, 10-year Tony. He's always talking about the markets, and he's one of my favorite people. Every time we get together, he wants to come over and just drill you with all the questions, his issues. But when you find people that have so many varying interests in what's needed by them, it brings up this challenge that is building this balance, and that I keep coming back to the balance. And I've watched you guys walk that balance between one of the branches going too far and really pissing off someone in ops. And then you guys, one of you, the other will pick up the other. And it's just watching that back and forth. That is just really dynamic. Every company has big, hairy, audacious goals, the BHAGs. They talk about that in the book, Built to Last. Give us some examples of BHAGs that you guys have had. We talked about your cautious nature because you do debate things, but there's times where you've gone out and taken some risks. You've created your own BHAGs. Bobby, it seems like a lot of it start with you. You're the guy that comes up with, you're the idea guy. And I got a new idea. I got a fresh new thing I want to talk to you guys about.
Well, I tend to kind of be a little bit more on the optimistic side, and Billy a little bit more on the realistic side, and Rob somewhere in the middle. So that's some of that healthy balance we talked about earlier. But, our vision is to be the most customer-focused mortgage company in America. And we think that's a big, audacious goal because we have a ways to go with that. But that drives everything we do, because to the point being, if we're focused on the customer, which is one of our customers is our loan officer, we're less likely to get upset and offended. Whereas if we're looking internally and thinking about ourselves, so we really try to maintain that. But, a couple things, we say we want to impact 25,000 people annually by the year 2028, which will be our 25th year in business. So 25 and 25. And so that's closed loans, but it's more than just closed loans. It's impact to different people in the community. So that's a big goal we have. And then, we have a goal of an 8-hour routine borrower approval. And so, with the technology advancements and some of the things that are going on in our industry, we think that at some point that's going to become routine. So that's a driving force for us. That's something we think about a lot and we work hard on.
Rob Behags, what comes to mind when you say the big, hairy, audacious? I love your private lending group. I mean, that's an example of what you guys went out and did something that was very innovative.
Yeah. So creative financing solutions, EFSGetO.com.
Yeah.
Thanks
for slipping that in there. So check it out, folks. That was good. That was smooth.
You got a going right now, right? Then we spun off four guys into that company, fix and flip, and growing that business, mainly in the Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia markets. Obviously, can go anywhere. A little bit less regulation. See if we can spin up another LC and see what we can turn it into.
Yeah, it's very creative. Bill?
When you say big, hairy, audacious goals, I kind of get back to, a couple of things that Bobby, said, the most, customer focused, mortgage company in America. It's, you think about that, you're like, well, how can you prove that? It's not about proving it. It's not about doing it. It's about always reaching for it. It's always, trying to get a little bit closer, make it a little bit better today, put your stuff in a little bit better position to be there tomorrow. And, that's just kind of, what we're, continually trying to do. And back in AI, and you loop back in some of these other, CFS that we've done, is just always constantly trying to add a little bit of out, just, an inch at a time. And, just try to incrementally get, a little bit better there. And, that's probably the best example of that, just because there is no finish line to that. It's just, you're always working a little bit, to get just a little bit closer. You're never going to get perfection. You're never going to actually get there. But you got something to constantly see that point on the horizon that you're always going after. That's definitely our biggest one that we all kind of rally around.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that can be a challenging one, especially in the book Built to Last. They talk about more than just profit. I mean, profit's important. Making good money, being a profitable company is important. But there's times where I've been in calls with you guys where you're facing a loan decision, Bobby, where you're looking at to do this loan, you're going to take it apart, but it comes back to being the most customer friendly, support the customer. And you guys have made some tough decisions around that.
Yeah, we always try to think long term. And again, that's beneficial to have the three of us, because sometimes you can come in and be short sighted on something and say, well, and just narrowly focused. And it takes stepping back sometimes and having that bigger view to say, well, the right thing by the customer is to go ahead and close this loan, even though it's going to cost us money. There's a long-term aspect to that. There might be a short-term gain by not closing it, not losing money or whatever, but the long-term consequence could be much worse. So making that investment, which it may be a short-term cost, but it ends up being a long-term investment, usually pays dividends.
No question it does, and it has for you guys. One of the things that they talk about in the book is empowering leadership. There's 3 strong leaders as owners in this company, 3AM, the 3 of you. How have you found developing and empowering leadership? How have you found a way to do that, especially knowing there's 3 of you? And you guys you're an easy target because everyone says, let's just bring the problem to 3AM. You've been doing better and better at pushing that back, developing and empowering the leadership. How you been doing that?
Well, that's something that we've had to learn and get better at over time. I would say, we started the business, we were very young in our early to mid 20s, and we didn't do a good job of that for a long time. We were probably did not empower leaders like we should have. So it's something we've worked very hard over especially the last 5 to 7 years. But one thing that makes that easier is having really good people to defer to. And we right now have the best leadership team we've ever had. And I think that makes it a lot easier in terms of the total team to do that. And it's amazing when you do it, when you empower them and things get handled and the stress levels go down versus the stress escalating. And so that's been cool to see. And it's also been cool to see some people grow, whereas maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they weren't capable of some of the things we entrusted with them now, but they've grown into that role. So that's cool as well.
Yeah. Rob, what's your thoughts on developing and empowering leaders?
We're trying to be a little bit more intentional with it this year. Word of the year company-wide is empowerment. So you've got our leadership team all trying to come up with new ways and new ideas to make this initiative a little bit more intentional. That goes down multi-layers to the front lines. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we come up with over the next month or 2 as we still progress through it.
You guys are still working through it. Bill, you want to add anything to it?
I'll be honest, I've probably been empowered by a lot of for growth in my own leadership by a lot of our people, more so than I feel that I've empowered other people, to be honest. Sometimes, with growing this business, we were 24 when we started it, and it's always been the biggest company that I've ever, especially in the mortgage industry, it's the biggest company I've ever worked for. So like, you're constantly, you're always growing with it. It's hard to, and fortunately we've been able to bring on some great people that have worked at some, larger organizations that are more complex. And, you've gained so much insight from them, how they've done things at other places, how other folks do those, things. And it's really, that's enriched us just as much as it has, the other way. I think a lot of, for us being younger, in the early years, it was, we wanted to empower people, but at the same time, when you're a young, struggling mortgage company, it's all about how can we stay afloat? How do we stay alive? And it's like, you don't want to let anybody know. It's like, well, we barely have enough money to actually make payroll this, when we were, 15.
Back in the early days. Yep.
So, you're like, I'd love to do that, but we don't have enough money. And so there's, you tended to keep your cars closer to your vest, a lot in those days. And now, we've had the freedom more to be a lot more transparent with our executive leadership. And, so it's, you're on the same page more,
And you have people that have been with you for how long? I mean, 23 years?
Right. Since the beginning, we've got,
Yeah, I mean, you're that. Well, let's talk. The last topic I want to talk about is continuous improvement, because Bobby's always listening to podcasts. Every time we talk to him, I got another podcast. Hey, Licken, did you listen to this podcast? It's really a great interview. You got to have this guest on. And you're reading books and listening to tapes. You're out there always looking at improving that. How do you bring that into an organization?
Well,
Bill's expression right there was enough, because sometimes it can get downright exhausting for the other two to go, oh, here's Bobby with another idea.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to purpose, if you're going to create a better way, if that's going to be your purpose, then I think the onus and the responsibility is to drive that forward. And that's probably the biggest job the three of us have, especially now that we've done a better job of equipping our leadership team. We have to bring them ideas, not that they don't have their own ideas, but we have to do a really good job of knowing what's out there. And so spend a lot of time, and I enjoy that, a lot of time listening to industry leaders, learning from them. I think we're all naturally curious. Some of that is we know we don't know it all. And to Billy's point about this is the biggest company we've ever owned and worked for. So we don't have the perspective of what a larger institution is doing or why they're doing it. So listening to some of those leaders talk, some of the podcasts, some of the people outside our industry, what they're doing, some of the technology advancements, how they're being integrated into companies, employee motivation, all those things, trying to learn from others and incorporate that into the company. Because ultimately it gets back to, we want a better experience for our customers, but we want a better experience for our team members too, and our communities. We want our communities to say, hey, we're actually better off because Alcova's here.
It's a great point. One of the things you do is you bring in a lot of outsiders. I've had the privilege of working with you guys. It's such an honor. But you bring in guys like Dale Vermillion. You bring in Elizabeth. Like Chick-fil-A. You picked up on some things there. Was it Elizabeth with Chick-fil-A? Is that correct? Elizabeth Dixon?
Yeah. No, we picked up a book of hers, Power of Customer Experience, with us attempting to be or working towards, I should say, the most customer-focused mortgage company. We're kind of like, who better than an executive from Chick-fil-A to help us with that? So that was a natural fit. She did a great job talking to our team, really all of our branch support team, about how can we support our branches better.
Good.
No matter what role you're in, no matter what role, you don't have to be a leader, but how do you support the customer better? So that was one example. Dale's done some leadership training for us. Of course, our relationship with you, which I think you saw the short a little earlier. You said 4 years. I think it's actually been 7.
Has it been? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It
seems like just yesterday we started. It's just having so much fun.
It really does. Yeah. You hadn't changed
7
a bit,
years?
by the way.
My gosh. Yeah.
You haven't changed a bit, by the way.
We're working on it. Yeah. So Bill, when you're looking at, constantly bringing in new, fresh ideas, there's times when I brought that up, I watched your reaction was, what was behind that reaction?
I looked at it kind of from a different perspective there. I feel like,
as you do many of the things, you look at things from a different perspective. I love that.
Well, I think to start off with, we all have our different ways of consuming, material. Bobby is a lot of, business books and industry podcasts and stuff like that. So he's bringing that, a lot of that knowledge in. I'm all over the place. I mean, I could be reading, I read a ton, but it's anything and everything. I mean, I'm reading a book right now about like big game hunting in Africa. So, I mean, it's like, it could be anything, anything under the sun, but I feel like, and Rob reads a lot of more technical stuff, like tertiary to a lot of the stuff that we would, bring in our business. So it kind of, we got a just different perspective, coming in.
Well, I think that's healthy. I mean, the parallels you get from, big game hunting, and it could be analogous to landing a big top producer. I mean,
sure, yeah.
You're hunting.
But nevertheless, it just is a different, we bring a different perspective on a lot of that. And I think, I guess the original answer to your question, why I made that face, is it's tough. It's tough. We get excited about, we'll read a book and Bobby's like, I just read this book. You guys got to read it, or vice versa. Me or Rob that do that, and we all read and we're like, oh my gosh, we're so excited. We want to, introduce this to our leadership staff and our employees, and we're so pumped about it. And then, you buy copies, and then you're like, hey, we're so pumped, and you guys are going to love this book. And you can't take that personally when inevitably
you get the eye roll from there for people out there. Yeah.
You can't, it is. I mean, everybody's got, families, and they've got their own lives, and, you can't expect everybody to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so, excited about this. We've had a couple hits, and
that book, the book that you got excited about, that got me so excited, was Unreasonable Hospitality by Gil. That one was one of the ones that
was the biggest hit. That was the biggest hit we've had, for our staff. I think a big part of it was a very, it was a different industry from the mortgage business. But
right.
A very, the hospitality,
hugely
wide ranging, and everybody kind of understands it a little bit. And, really you can apply anything to that to our business, and I think people really, it was kind of like it wasn't a direct apples to apples comparison, but that's kind of what made it, so great. So, and we can say, oh, we got to find more books like that, but that's, good luck with that. It is. I mean, all you can do is just try to continue to, and if you can, I kind of look at it like any business book, they're 300 or 400 page long. And really, realistically, there's probably in any book, it's like a half a chapter or a chapter that you're like, wow, that's a big, that's great. And that's a huge success, to be honest. You can, if you can just get, a 10% or 5% of your staff to read something, and it's something strikes them, and that's a huge success.
That book, The Unreasonable Hospitality, the whole book from from the jacket to the book, back of the book, was one of those, just one amazing principle after another. Rob, you're on the technical side, which, I mean, I love the balance you bring. I get caught up with enthusiasm with every latest AI something. I'm bringing it up, and I love bringing it in there, because then you go, well, let me take a look at that. And you respectfully consider, but your perspective on where we're going from a tech standpoint. And that's where a lot of your focus is.
I keep saying it's coming, as everybody else does, but now it's been almost 2 years. Granted, each revision of these AI models get infinitely better, so it'll be here, but it's just the accuracy is the big thing. It's way too much information out there for the listeners to decipher and give it back exactly what we need and what the loan officers need to hear.
Well, I think one of the big things Rob has to focus on, it's unfortunate, and it's just the cybersecurity stuff. It's with like AI, it works the other way. It's working against you every day. The ability to reach out to so many people and just cast this huge net. And, we're seeing it every day with our clients, with our third party vendors, with us. It's just like an ongoing battle, and it's nothing productive. You're not gaining anything. You're just built, you're just trying to keep that, that wall there, to protect yourself. And it's trying. And Rob's got to deal a lot with that. Our staff, it's something, we're being attacked every day, somewhere.
And we all are.
Yeah.
We all are. It's just the reality of our world. As we wrap this up, let's look at the future. You guys have been at this for a good number of years, more than 2 decades, and have done very well. You've navigated a lot of this. We've got some more challenging days ahead, especially as IMBs. We're looking at some of those. What would be your perspective from 3 a.m. to our listeners, where you see the future, starting with you, Bill?
I can, none of us have a crystal ball with what's going to happen. I always say, when you're just looking at the basic things, when we started this business, 20 whatever years ago, it took about 45 days, 30 to 45 days to close a mortgage. And here 20 some years later, it still takes about 45 days to close a mortgage. And and we've got all these different technologies. Obviously we've got new sets of laws, so you can never know, really what the future is gonna lie. For us, it's just, we've got that goal to become the most, customer oriented, mortgage company in America. And we're just going to continue to focus on that. And we know at the end of the day, there's going to be somebody out there that needs help. And whether how much technology you have, it's always going to be, a very unnerving process when you've never done it, to buy a house, the house of your dreams, the house that you've been looking for a year and a half, and you finally came on in the right neighborhood. It's the right house. It means so much. And, to lose it on the, to get down to the 5-yard line and lose it on something.
Lose it in the red zone. Yeah.
Mortgages, it'd be heartbreaking. And, that's where we want to continue to focus. And we feel like, in the least in the foreseeable future, there's going to be people out there that need that service, need that, high touch, situation. And, we're going to try to be the best at it. And we're going to keep looking at all of the technologies that come across to help us do that. But still, at the end of the day, it's a personal relationship with someone who needs help. Financing, probably one of the biggest assets still ever owned. We're going to take any kind of help we can get to do that, any kind of product, any kind of technology. But at the end of the day, it becomes that. And if you take care of that, I feel like the future is going to kind of take care of itself there.
Yeah. Rob, your perspective on the future?
Yeah. This industry is pretty complicated. It's not just one. It's the economy. Got to watch the real estate industry, the banking industry, like the appraisals. What's going on with the appraisers these days? Back to the Boy Scout motto, always be prepared. I think we're prepared pretty much on every front. So we can handle anything that comes at us. That's probably what lets me go to sleep at night.
Yeah, that's good. Bobby, you read all the books. You see the future. We share a lot of the same perspective. I'm really interested in your future. What your thoughts are.
David, I think it's one of the most exciting times in the history of the real estate mortgage industry. And I'll tell you why. We've got a lot of great demographics that are in our favor the next, 5 to 10 years. But, a lot of folks are really nervous about AI, and they're equating it to, well, we're going to have massive job losses and this and that. But, if you look back in history, every time we've had advancements, major advances in technology, there's been a net benefit. And I think part of that's the unseen. It's easier to look and say, okay, this could be eliminated or that could be eliminated. It's harder to focus on what could be created, and we've seen with the internet just a couple of decades ago, think about all the jobs, all the opportunities that are available because of the internet. I think AI is going to be similar. And if we equate it to our industry, ATMs came out in the 1970s, and all sorts of people said, oh, it's going to eliminate tellers. Tellers are going to go by the wayside, bank tellers. And actually what it did, it increased the amount of tellers because a lot of the low-level, inefficient things were handled with the ATM level, and the tellers could focus on higher level, higher value opportunities with customers. And I think that's going to be what happens in the mortgage industry. So I think if you embrace it, if you embrace the technology with a healthy, both realism and optimism combined, that you embrace it, there's a lot of opportunity, so that's what we're going to do. We believe the hybrid approach, the high touch, high tech is the way to win. We think it takes both. We think tremendous opportunities, and we believe we can capitalize on.
You guys have done a great job of doing that for over 2 decades, and it's a joy and a privilege to work with you. I love the dynamics. I look forward to our coaching calls we have every week. Thank you so much for being here, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And a little plug for you, David. You've been a great mentor to us, great coach. So anybody out there that's looking for someone to help them navigate all these uncertain times that, Rob mentioned some of them, all the things going on, can't recommend David enough. And the reason I knew it was 7 years because you were there with us during the COVID days, and those were some very scary times, and you were a stable force for us, a lot of wisdom and guidance through that time period, which was a little unnerving to say the least.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you've helped us for, and couldn't recommend you, and to your listeners out there, recommend you enough.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah, I think I recall there's like a country music song that came out a few years ago, something like I got a guy for that. And like pretty much anytime we talk to you and we have some kind of need, you're always like, I got a guy for that. And
I got someone for that. I can introduce you to someone. Yeah.
Yeah, I got somebody for you. So yeah.
That's good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well, kudos to your success. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. Hope this inspires you, listeners. Realize this, that it takes more than just one person making decisions. What makes these guys so strong are the things you heard about here, but it's the dynamics of coming together with a core team. Make sure you surround yourself with people that will challenge you as these guys do each other. Thank you for being here, gentlemen. Have a blessed rest of your day.
Appreciate it.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's been made possible because of our sponsors, Title Ease. Be sure to check them out. Additional revenue, great company. Also, Byte Software, First Close. If you're looking at getting into second mortgages and doing anything with it, you need to check out First Close. Also, Angel AI, the leader in anything going on in AI in our mortgage industry. True. God, I love what these guys are doing, as well as Candid. It's a CRM and so much more. The Mortgage Bankers Association of America. Thank God we have them helping us continue to be the leaders in our space. Lenders One, Modex, Redder, Mortgage Advisory Tools, and Fuel. Man, all of these, you can check them all out at our website, Look on Lending, under sponsors. Appreciate you tuning in for this podcast. Share it with others. We appreciate you as a listener. See you back here for the next podcast. Thank you.
You've been listening to Lickin' on Lending. Our passion is to bring you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. So on this show, if you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, it's your go-to source for all things mortgage. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back soon. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Lickin' on Lending.